And for me, when I was thinking about this, I wasn't going to tell a story, but thinking about if I did tell a story, I thought, man, I've made so many big mistakes. I don't know how to decide which mistake actually talk about. So what I decided to talk about tonight is something that I thought would be one of the biggest mistakes of my life that turned out not to really be a mistake at all. So I lived the past 10 years in Atlanta, and it was a very diverse place, a very open place, and it was a place where if Jane and I wanted, we could walk down the street holding hands. Nobody said a word. Nobody gave us any kind of weird looks. And I was lucky enough to be out at the school where I taught. And this was downtown Atlanta, so it was a wonderful thing to be able to be out, to have the kids ask me questions about, what does your wife do? What did your wife get you for Christmas? And these were such normal, everyday conversations. And then we moved here back to the mountains. And I have to tell you, I'm from here. So we didn't move here with blinders on. I'm from a little town that's way smaller than Floyd, Honaker, Virginia. It's near Grundy. And so I grew up there, and I left 20 years ago. And one of the reasons I left is because I was pretty sure I was gay. And I unfortunately associated the mountains, even though we had bought a house here, I associated the mountains with a lot of negativity, and especially homophobia, because it was my experience, especially because of the church that my parents and I attended. My pastor would get up and he would say things like, God save us from the murderers and the rapists and the sorcerers and the homosexuals. And so I grew up thinking, oh my God, I'm like a murderer. I'm like a sorcerer. I'm like a rapist. I mean, oh my God, you know? So as you can imagine, I left the mountains as soon as I could and didn't look back. Well, 10 years living in Atlanta was wearing on me. I loved so many things about the city, but the traffic and the lack of infrastructure was driving Jane and I berserk. So we wondered, where do we move to? And I always loved Floyd. I'd gone to school at Virginia Tech. So we ended up buying a little house here in Meadows of Dan. And I say this because now I'm teaching at Patrick County High School, very close to here in Stewart. And it was a very different experience for me being completely out in the classroom. And then when we moved here, I thought, ooh, I'm going back in the closet for sure. I'm not telling anybody. There's no way I'm telling the kids. And that was kind of how I've lived my year until probably the first week of November. And throughout the year, and I love my kids, and they're really, for the most part, kind, generous, beautiful people. But they only know what they know and what they've been exposed to. And I kept hearing since August, I kept hearing the F word, not which bothers me even more than the first F word. So I kept hearing that since August over and over and over again. And when I first heard it, I thought, my God, like, what do I say? And I felt this burning in my heart and my soul, thinking, oh my God, like, that's about me. And the kid, I don't know if the kids even realize what they're saying. So the more I heard it, and it became clear that they were saying it like the word park, the word street, the word school. They were saying it so much, they had no idea what it actually meant. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take some of these kids in the hall and just talk to them and just say to them, hey, you know, do you know really what you're saying? This is really inappropriate. Well, let me tell you, that had zero effectiveness whatsoever, having those conversations, because the next days, the next weeks, I would still hear the F word, you know, all over the place. And the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. And, you know, it always takes a while to build relationships with kids. So I didn't want to come in August and really I wanted to tell them some things about myself, but frankly, I was really scared because I knew where I was. I had such a negative association with the mountains, with my experience in the mountains of Southwest Virginia. So the first week of November, and I have the most wonderful co-teacher who is here, Rainey, who has witnessed all of this. Rainey and I started talking about what it would look like if I came out in class. And she encouraged me, and she was very loving and kind, but I was still scared to death. Patrick County doesn't exactly have a non-discrimination clause when it comes to sexual orientation. Hopefully they will soon. But they don't. So I knew that I could be fired. So it's a very dangerous thing. Well, I guess I was just feeling moved one day, and Rainey and I had all these conversations, and I guess it was one of those things where the straw that broke the camel's back happened. I heard the F word loud and clear. Somebody called somebody else that. And I thought, I just can't do this anymore. I have to do something about this. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I certainly didn't plan this. So I have this huge dry erase board in class. And I wrote the word in huge letters, like spread across one side of the board to the other. And, once you do that in a 9th grade English class, there's really no going back. So I looked at what I did, and I thought, what am I supposed to do now? What am I even supposed to say? I just can't deal with this word being said over and over again. And so I stood back, and I was trembling, and I looked at the kids, and some of them were trembling, and some of them were laughing, and I said, you know what? Do you know why I've talked to so many of you outside of class about this word? And I said, it's because I'm gay. I have a wife. And every time you say this word, it absolutely breaks my heart. And I looked out into the audience, and some of my students started crying. And then I started crying. And I realized they didn't know what they were saying. They didn't know what it would do to me. They had no association that was anybody they knew or anybody they cared about. And by November, these are my babies, and I'm like their second mother. We cared about each other very deeply, and I saw something that I had frankly never seen before, of kids really doing like a complete 180 in their mind. It's like when that light bulb turns off when you're seeing a concept. I saw that, but it was like in the soul. And I said to the kids, I said, do you know that this is like saying the N-word about somebody who is black? And they said, what? We didn't know. And I said, you are all really kind people. And I know you would never say the N-word about people because you're kind. And to do so would make you cruel. And you're not cruel people. But do you know that when you say the F word about people like me, people who love you so much, that you're being really cruel, and you're not cruel people. And so, the kids said, why didn't you tell us? It's November. Why didn't you tell us? And again, I'm practically weeping, and I said, because I thought you wouldn't love me. I was afraid. And so we ended up having, a really beautiful experience. That was first period. And then they left, and I said to Rainey, oh my God, I have to do this 2 more times today. So I did it second period, I did it third period, practically shaking every single time that I did it, and shaking not only because of worrying the kids didn't love me. I wasn't really worried about being fired necessarily, although I could be because I'm gay, but worrying about just what the kids would think. And I was also, it brought back a lot for me about sitting in a pew at a church and our pastor preaching what he did. And he preached so much hate guised as love. And it was a very healing moment for me to be able to tell my students the truth about me. And since then, I've been so thrilled because, we don't talk about it daily. Nobody says, I'm sure they say in the hall, she's the gay teacher, but a lot of good things have happened because of that. One is Patrick County High School is actually getting a gay-straight alliance, believe it or not. Something I never thought would happen. One of the kids came to me and said she was interested in organizing one, and I was blown away. And I talked to the administration, and I wasn't sure if they would give us any problems or not. And they said, yes, move forth, go, do it. And sometimes, every now and then, one of the kids will say, hey, Dr. Presley, what did you and your wife do this weekend? And that really thrills me because that's an ordinary conversation. And I want to be an ordinary conversation. So that's my story about what I thought would be a huge mistake that really wasn't.